Okay, so I just finished reading Many Lives, Many Masters by Weiss. I have so many thoughts. Uh, where do I start? It's a hard book to get through, especially if you're skeptical about all of the instances that the author, talks about. We'll, for the purposes of this video, assume that everything that he said is true and it's actually what happened, because there's no way to prove otherwise, and unless there are some tapes that are floating online. I haven't looked anything up, so this is right after I've finished reading, so I don't know if there is evidence to prove or disprove all of his claims in the book. They are certainly very sketchy, and we'll assume that it's all true and we can take it from there. Okay, so there are only two characters and others are minor characters like the author's wife, his children, or the patient's boyfriend. So keeping all of that aside and just focusing on these two characters, our doctor, what do you call it? What do we call him? Not the psychologist, physiologist maybe, or psychiatrist, I guess. So he comes across as the wise sage, actually, as if he can do no wrong. So, for instance, an argument he brings up over and over again is that he was very successful as a child. He grew up to become this great doctor. He has multiple research papers under his name, and his argument to prove that what he claims did actually happen is that there is no reason for him to say otherwise, because everything is going perfectly all right in his scientific and academic career, and he has no reason to make such outlandish claims, if you will. So he makes that argument, which already shows that he is relying on his merits as a academic and a scientist to gain the trust of his readers into believing that what he is going to say, for example, in the future, will be true, and he has no reason to quote unquote lie to all of us. Okay, so that's that. The second character is someone called Catherine. Obviously, the name is changed, but she has multiple phobias to begin with before she comes to our doctor for treatment. And by the end of the treatment, almost all of those phobias have gone. Her fears are gone, and it's almost exaggerated to a comical level where even when she goes to have breakfast, people flock to her, and I'm quoting now, that they say that you look beautiful and radiant, and people just can't stay away from her when she goes to eat breakfast at a hospital, which is let's say it's hard to believe, and we can call it a hyperbole for the time being. So these are the character transformations that take place. Now let's get into the quote-unquote plot as well. All of these, most of these chapters follow the same pattern. Catherine comes in, the doctor puts her to a deep trance. Again, this is in quotes. Hypnosis as a technique, I don't know much about it, obviously, because otherwise I wouldn't be so skeptical. But the doctor puts her to in this hypnotic state, so to say, and she begins narrating her life from a previous lifetime. So it would typically start with what she was wearing, where she was, how the weather was, what the people around her looked like, all of that. So again, this it's not entirely believable because she is not in her conscious mind to answer all of the questions that are asked. So, for example, I remember once the doctor asked what the color of her eyes were, and she said something like, I don't know, green. But that's interesting because there's no way to tell the color of your eyes before you look at a mirror, and she just got into the trance, and there's no way she could tell what the color of her eyes was without looking at a mirror. And obviously this is ancient times, so I'm assuming there is no mirror. It was a desert for all I can remember. And so some part of it has to be made up. I didn't want to use that word, but there's no other way to explain what was written, so we can go with that. So you go through all of that, and typically the doctor will fast forward that lifetime to see if anything significant happened, which usually it does happen. And then we go to the part where she dies, and obviously she can either be a male or a female in that lifetime. So she dies, and this is the experience that stood out of all, because we can still understand someone speaking in their dreams or even in a hypnotic state. That isn't that hard to believe. But now, after you die in your dream, you usually wake up. But in the hypnotic state, that doesn't happen. What does happen is that you leave the physical realm, so you are no longer on earth in whatever imaginary state you are in your mind, and you go to something called the in-between state, which is okay, I shouldn't laugh at that, but it's like the upside down from Stranger Things or something. It's a funny name to call it, but I guess you can I don't know, it's like the in between to something higher. So again, this is, it's not like a spoiler, we can talk about it. It's so basically there are multiple dimensions or planes, and you go from the physical dimension to a different dimension, maybe the intellectual, I don't know what it's I think there is a transition plane, there is a renewal plane, I think. I don't care. There are 7 of these apparently. I don't know where that number comes from as well. Anyway, so you go to this in-between state where you can... So the characteristics of this state is that there is a white light, and bright white light, and there are guardian angels, quote unquote, and then there are sages, there are masters, there are master spirits who actually are roaming around, monitoring what's happening in the physical realm. And then it's almost sci-fi at this point where they call you and you have to present your case basically on what you did learn from this lifetime, whether your, again, quote unquote, debt was paid, and whether you are qualified enough to go to the next plane. So unless you have done the learning that you're supposed to do in this lifetime, you will not be allowed to go to the higher plane, and you will be returned to Earth in a different body to finish that learning. Okay, as a concept, that's a cool concept, I guess, and yeah, that happens over and over to Catherine. We obviously do not know if her soul makes it to the higher planes, because she is able to recall. I think somewhere it said that she has lived around 84 lives, around many centuries, some as old as I don't know, from the time of ancient Egypt, where she is helping with the burial of people, making mummies and such. So really ancient times, and she has lived, at least this soul that we now know as Catherine in this lifetime has lived 84 or some lives, and then she is able to recall only 12 of those because somehow somebody, or let's say the master spirits, have decided that only those 12 lifetimes are the only ones that she should remember, or that they are important. So she gets flashbacks from those, learnings from those. The learnings are pretty basic. It gets tiring after a point where it's yeah, how do you say it? At the end of the book, the author gives an example that there are these fake hypnosis people who do this and give some banal proclamations, let's say, like you need to live in harmony with nature and nature should live in harmony with you. And he criticizes that, saying that it's too basic without any proof and detail, for example. But then your own messages and the messages that Catherine gives you are the same. So you have to live in peace with one another. You need to not spread hate. You need to control your anger. You need to, I don't know, there are a bunch of these pretty basic learnings that she gets from each of these lifetimes. Yeah, there's nothing special about these learnings. Even towards the end, the learnings, there is almost like a list. Let me just pull it up and see what most of it says. Oh yeah, there's one more tangent on technology that the author goes into, saying that by using technology we lost the connect between the patient and the doctor, and there is no mutual understanding or satisfaction gained when we use technology, which is what do I say? I don't quite agree with that. He says that technology should be used to prove claims or like get data, but there should still be a doctor-patient connect, which is fair, I guess. But then it's the same. I'm addicted to the smartphone. Get off social media argument. It's nothing new, and we all know that it depends on us on how we use the technology that makes it useful and satisfactory for us, or it has the negative effects that people talk about. Anyway, so ignoring that, let's look at some of the learnings. So let's see. Okay, I got it. Balance and harmony are neglected today, yet they are the foundations of wisdom. Again, balance and harmony. You just criticized this, saying that learnings cannot be so broad, it has to be specific. You again are repeating the same thing. In nature, there is balance. Beasts destroy in small amounts. What does that mean? You have to consider humans as a species, and you cannot call it destruction. Humankind has not learned about balance, let alone practiced it. I mean, fine, true, but then it has achieved so much. It is guided by greed and ambition. Yeah, that's why it has come so far. That's why we are no longer animals. If we didn't have greed and ambition, we wouldn't be here. It's again some very simplistic messages that are reiterated over and over, and a huge learning from the whole process with Catherine was that life and death are just cycles, and you only take a body and then your soul goes out when you die. It learns some stuff, it chills out basically. There is like a relaxation period where it's just supposed to roam around and relax and reflect on what it learned from this lifetime before the masters call it. And then it finds another body if it isn't going to the higher state, and then it still remembers people from the previous lifetime. So there are multiple instances where Catherine in the previous lifetime will recognize someone who is still in the present lifetime. There is over and over this reiteration of our doctor being her teacher, quote unquote, and it gets repetitive after a while. We get it. He's the teacher. He knows everything, and he's wise. He's the author presents himself as this innocent, let's say, bystander who has very logical reasonings in his mind about how this world works. And then there are these like giant revelations from the masters that are so profound that it has changed his life and Catherine's life, where basically the learning was that stay away from toxic pieces of shit like Stuart, for example. You didn't need a hypnotic session and a profound message from the master spirits to tell you that. It's pretty obvious. But okay, not going on that tangent now. Okay, let's skip ahead. A quick comment on life and death not being, what do I say? It's a part of cycle basically. It's a very old concept as well. I was reminded of this book by Dan Brown. Was it Inferno? No. I think it's called The Lost Symbol, where a similar concept from Kabbalistic traditions is used, where, again, this will be a spoiler, so skip like 30 seconds if you don't want it. The main villain turns out that he is preparing for a transition to reach that higher plane of enlightenment. He is completely tattooed up, and then he obviously is doing a lot of practices like meditation and like switching between hot and cold temperature showers to get him to that state of transition. So this concept isn't new, but I like that it is somehow integrated into Catherine's experiences. It somehow gives more credibility to her story of how she's able to relate between multiple lifetimes. Because you can use another explanation, which is that there are some parts of your conscious mind that you don't understand yet, we aren't smart enough to understand yet, and then that stores your information from the past life. But they didn't do that. They separate the soul and transition in from like multiple bodies, which is like a smarter way to explain away these occurrences. There is some mention of deja vu as well somewhere, and it's definitely something to look into. If there is one thing that I take away from this, is that I would definitely want to be hypnotized. Please, and I would like to see it for myself. If there is someone else who is getting hypnotized by this doctor or by anyone else, I'd love to be in that room and see if she actually says that. I would actually slap the person in hypnosis and see what happens if she's actually in the hypnotic state and not just reciting this from a script. It would be an interesting experiment. I think I can be easily hypnotized, and I would definitely would love to get into that state of mind and see what I say. I'd love to see a video of myself doing that. But again, one of the tenets of such a process is that you have to believe in it. But I think if I reach that point ever, then I would be ready to go through all of this and see where it leads me. I still have an open mind, so I'm not dismissing this book entirely. What else can I add? The last few chapters are for sure the most interesting, where they are like short 4 or 5 page chapters, and they just quickly go through all the points that we have learned in the previous 10 or 12 chapters. Interesting. So if you have less time and only want to read a few chapters, then I would definitely recommend just reading the last 3 or 4. That's good enough. What else? Overall, I like the book. It's a good read. If you it can get repetitive at times for sure, but if you don't mind that, and if you look at it from a story point of view rather than thinking that this is reality and this is how it must have happened, then you might have a hard time reading it. But if you take out the realness part of it and consider it fiction, then it might be a good read for some of you. Yeah, I think it's time that I looked into all of his claims a bit more and analyzed some of the data that he must have put out in public about this book, and see what other people have to say about it. Again, like I said, I just finished reading it, so I haven't looked into that, but I'm really interested in what other people, especially people who have done hypnosis, are talking about, and what they say about this experience and this book in particular. Yeah, that's it. It's I went on too many tangents, which I shouldn't have. This is a long review for this book, but it's okay. Thanks for listening if you made it to this part. Yeah, that's it. Thanks. Bye.